Alright, it's been a massive week as ArenaNet finally revealed the upcoming Visions of Eternity expansion, and they confirmed that we're not just going to a single region, but 2 at launch. And that we're getting 9 new elite specs, 6 new legendary gear pieces, 2 new raid encounters, and quite a bit more actually. And they also dropped a trailer, which might not look like it shows much at first glance, but I've analyzed it in incessant detail on stream already, and it actually does give us quite a few clues on where we might be going, the story, what those 3 legendary weapons might be, which could be good to know if you want to speculate a little bit on the trading post, and maybe even why they said 2 regions but they only talk about Castora. Now before we get started though, I am incredibly happy to announce that as of this week I became an official ArenaNet partner. So if you like what you see and you're planning on getting the new expansion, then please consider using my partner link. It won't cost you anything extra, but it does help my channel stay afloat. But let's get back to it, as the trailer starts us off on a massive vessel and with a quote that makes it clear that we're investigating the inquest. And from the blog post we learned that they've been organizing covert missions in search of Castora, which is an island so remote we thought it was inaccessible. In fact, it is so remote we don't even have lore on the place. Like literally nothing. A page of Castora was only created after the reveal. Now, one of my viewers did point out though that there is one island on the world map already that would be very fitting, as there's one that's incredibly remote and it's called Dawn, which is coincidentally one of the 2 legendaries you would need to craft Eternity and would be very fitting for the expansion title. But that might still be a coincidence, as the trailer teaches us that Castora is brimming with ley energy and Dawn doesn't really cross a ley line unless something on Tyria has changed. So the title might have more to do with the actual Inquest lore, which is an Azuran organization in search of mastering the eternal alchemy so that they can establish Azuran dominion over all other species. Eternal alchemy, by the way, is an ideology that everything, regardless of how small or insignificant something may be, is part of a great cosmic mechanism, and it's even believed that the human gods, the elder dragons, and even magic are just a component of eternal alchemy. So it looks like we might somewhat leave the Titans, the Realm of Torment, and even demons behind for now, which I think is a good thing, as my best moments these past expansions were discovering beautiful places like Amnitas or more recently the Lowland Shore, and that is exactly what Castora seems to offer. Now, this is the final expansion in a 3-part cycle though, so I also don't think we'll leave everything behind, which becomes apparent relatively quickly as Isgaran is already on Castora with us, and the waypoints look oddly familiar if you're used to the ones in the Wizard's Tower. So I wouldn't be surprised that by the end of this expansion, it's gonna make sense why the story took us from the Wizard's Tower to the Demon Realms of Inner Naos, which was the original home of the Mersat by the way, and then to the Jantir Islands where the Eye, which was a tool used by the White Mantle and the Mersat, originated from, all the way to discovering that their settlement Bava Nisos itself became a Titan. Now the trailer also features something rather unassuming that might already explain why we're specifically getting a legendary Aquabreather, a ring, a trinket and 3 new weapons. Because if you think about it, it wouldn't make any sense to give us 3 random weapons, as except for the spear and the sword, no other weapon can be used by all 9 professions. So it wouldn't make any sense for ArenaNet to suddenly introduce a new hammer, focus and dagger for example, as that would probably end up angering more people if anything, and ArenaNet probably knows that as well. Now there are also too many different weapon types to be hit with a plot twist that will be getting 3 per update, so I don't think that's likely to happen either. But there are 3 however that are tied together, and those are the underwater weapons. And yes, I know, we recently got a spear, but it would work as part of an underwater combo. Now the actual reason why I'm suggesting these 3 is not only for the Aquabreather though, but rather also because there might be some indications that underwater content could make a comeback, and for very 2 different reasons. First of all, ArenaNet has been on a roll giving us features we've been asking for over the past decade or so, as we now have player housing, consistently new endgame encounters, whether those are strikes or raids or even fractal challenge modes, as well as convergences so that people can enjoy 50-man raid-like fights as well. And on top of that, we also have our open world legendary armor, grindable activities like rifts, land spears, and the list just keeps going by the way, because I already forgot about the Warclaw upgrade, the new Wizard's Tome and Gobbler that will save us a ton of inventory space. So yes, story pacing wasn't all there in the last 2 expansions, but if you take a step back, they've been listening and focusing on player demands. And underwater content is something that's been requested for so long, I could really see them add it to the lineup as well. But that's not the only reason why I think we might see an underwater region. And yes, I do mean region, as in the second of 2 that were mentioned in the blog post, because there is a scene with Ridlock, Isgaran and our new Azuran BFF running away from what seems to be a magical blue wave in some sort of a tomb. Except we also see water pouring down from the walls. So what if this dome or structure is located underwater? Which would make even more sense, as we're also getting a skimmer rework this expansion to make them faster, and they seem to be getting the sky scale and turtle treatment so that we'll be able to use them to engage in combat. So yeah, an update featuring at least some underwater content seems very likely to me. But that's far from everything I want to discuss, because we're also getting 2 new raid encounters and of course the 9 new elite specs. And let's maybe start with the raids, as ArenaNet has already mentioned that they'll be unifying both raids and strikes under the same structure, so that they can improve access to new players, streamline rewards, and also give us better systems to organize them. But I also want to touch on the raid bosses specifically, as the video features what looks like a raid boss with that giant crustacean, which if you take a closer look, seems to be shackled by some kind of magic. But I'm actually not sure that this will be a raid boss, but rather an open world one, because if you go check out one of the pictures on the pre-purchase page, we see another enemy that is clearly enclosed within an arena with blurred edges, exactly like those we would see on fights like Veiled Guardian in Wing 1. So for now, my guess is that the Crustacean will be a meta event and that the Guardian Fairy will be the first of 2 raid encounters introduced in 2026. And yes, that is the name according to the image link. And that brings me to the elite specs, of which they already officially revealed that we're not getting the Bard but the Troubadour for the Mesmer, not Indiana Jones but the Antiquary for the Thief, and the Evoker, which in all fairness is getting a literal Firefox. Now, I'm not sure if this new companion will change based on the element we're attuned to, as the elementalist in the trailer is clearly attuned to fire. But we should figure that out next week as soon as the blog post and the live streams are happening. It is worth noting though that when all 3 new specs are posing together, we can still see the pet hovering in the background, potentially indicating that we are getting a new pet class. Next in the lineup was the Antiquary, which threw me and a lot of others for a loop, as the name doesn't instantly fit with playing cards from the teaser image. But regardless, they too seem to be getting some sort of a companion. Although this time I don't think it's a permanent one, but rather a skill animation that sees them digging for what seems to be treasure, which sounds really cool as an open world enjoyer, but I can very well imagine that they'll also grant us some sort of boons to make this viable in group content as well. Now, the reason why I'm thinking this won't be a permanent companion is also because of that shot with all specs posing together, because there we don't see it featured anymore. And that brings me to the Troubadour, which just about everybody correctly guessed would belong to the Mesmer, but the trailer also shed some light in that 1 second of footage, because unlike the image on the website, this time they're not playing a lute, but a flute. And that 1 letter of difference has some serious implications, because either the instrument will change based on the utility skill, or, hear me out, what if there's some sort of kit? And I don't mean the ones the engineers have, by the way, but rather something more like the Firebrand tomes they can dip into for 5 new abilities based on what type of spell they want to cast. Because it wouldn't be the first time that ArenaNet completely upends profession mechanics, and this seems to be a great candidate for that. Now, I also have a bit of good news, but some very bad news too. The good news is that we'll get a blog post about these 3 on Wednesday, and then a live stream probably showcasing their abilities on Friday, so we're gonna find out soon enough. And I also assume that this will be a weekly thing for the next month, until all 9 of them have been revealed, so that ArenaNet can bridge the gap to the Elite Spec Beta, which will run from August 20 to 27. Which brings me to the bad news, because it's gonna be a very long 3.5 months before we actually get to play the expansion. But that's where I come in, because whenever we have an update, I'm gonna dig into those into incredible detail, probably overanalyze everything on stream, and then make a video like this one so I too can help bridge the gap. So if you want to see more of this, just hit the like and subscribe buttons, and maybe go check out my other videos too, because you can probably set up your account for success by the time the expansion releases to unlock most if not all of the legendaries from the get-go by following some of my other guides.